The Middle East has entered another period of uncertainty. Within just a few days, three major developments captured the attention of governments, military analysts, and energy markets around the world. The United States announced strikes against targets linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Reports then emerged that Iran was preparing to receive Chinese-made portable air defense missile systems. Not long afterward, a drone strike involving a liquefied natural gas vessel at Egypt's Damietta port raised fresh concerns about the security of regional energy infrastructure. At first glance, these appear to be three separate headlines, but viewed together, they raise a larger question. Are these isolated events, or signs that the strategic balance in the Middle East is beginning to change? Before exploring that question, one principle is important. Throughout this documentary, we will clearly distinguish verified reporting from analysis. The events themselves are based on Reuters reporting and other publicly available information. When we discuss possible consequences or future scenarios, those sections are analysis rather than established fact. That distinction matters because international crises often evolve rapidly, and early reports can change as additional information becomes available. With that in mind, let's begin with the first development. According to Reuters, the United States carried out strikes against multiple targets associated with Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC. American officials described the operation as a response within a broader cycle of regional military tensions. The IRGC occupies a unique position inside Iran's security structure. Military strikes are rarely intended to achieve only one objective. Destroying infrastructure may be one purpose. Sending a political message may be another. Demonstrating military capability, reinforcing deterrence, reassuring allies, or influencing an opponent's future decisions can all be part of the same operation. For that reason, analysts often pay as much attention to why a strike occurred as they do to what was struck. History shows that conflicts seldom move in a straight line. One action is often followed by another. Military operations may be answered with diplomatic initiatives. Economic measures may accompany security decisions. New defensive preparations may appear long before another shot is fired. This cycle of action and response has shaped many regional crises over the past several decades. That broader context helps explain why the next report attracted so much attention. Even before analysts had finished assessing the implications of the reported U.S. strikes, another story began circulating through international media. Reuters reported that Iran was preparing to receive Chinese-made man-portable air defense systems, commonly known as man-pads. Compared with large air defense batteries, these systems are much smaller. Yet, despite their size, they have influenced battlefields around the world because they can threaten helicopters and certain low-flying aircraft under the right conditions. At this stage, many questions remain unanswered. How would such systems be integrated into Iran's existing defenses? Would they significantly affect military planning? Or would their greatest impact be psychological, forcing commanders to operate more cautiously simply because the threat exists? Those questions cannot yet be answered with certainty, but they illustrate why this development quickly became part of a much larger conversation. Because once military planners begin reconsidering how aircraft operate in contested airspace, the effects can extend far beyond a single shipment of equipment. And while attention focused on the skies above Iran, another event was unfolding hundreds of kilometers away, one that would shift attention from air defense to something equally critical: the security of global energy routes. Because once military planners begin reconsidering how aircraft operate in contested airspace, the effects can extend far beyond a single shipment of equipment. And while attention focused on the skies above Iran, another event was unfolding hundreds of kilometers away, one that would shift attention from air defense to something equally critical: the security of global energy routes. Unlike military bases, energy infrastructure affects nearly every country, whether directly or indirectly. Oil and liquefied natural gas produced or transported through the Middle East help power industries, generate electricity, and stabilize economies across Europe, Asia, and other regions. When security around these routes is questioned, Governments, shipping companies, and financial markets all begin paying closer attention. That is why the next report quickly became more than just another regional incident. According to Reuters, a drone struck a liquefied natural gas vessel at Egypt's Damietta port, one of the country's major energy export facilities on the Mediterranean coast. At the time of the initial reporting, authorities were still assessing the full circumstances surrounding the incident. As with many fast-moving international events, investigations were continuing, and not every question had been answered. But even before all the facts were available, one thing was already clear. The attack immediately reminded policymakers that modern conflicts no longer remain confined to traditional battlefields. A single incident involving critical infrastructure can ripple through international supply chains, insurance markets, shipping operations, and diplomatic discussions. In today's interconnected world, the consequences of regional instability often travel much farther than the weapons themselves. Military strategists have discussed this reality for years. Modern warfare is no longer measured only by territory gained or military equipment destroyed. It is also measured by uncertainty. If commercial shipping companies believe a route has become more dangerous, they may alter sailing schedules. Insurance providers may increase premiums. Energy traders may respond to higher perceived risks. Governments may deploy additional naval assets to reassure commercial traffic. Sometimes these secondary effects become just as strategically important as the original military incident. That is precisely why attacks involving ports, shipping lanes, or energy facilities receive immediate international attention. They influence far more than the country where the event occurred. For Egypt, facilities such as Damietta represent important components of its energy sector and its role in international LNG exports. For importing nations, the uninterrupted movement of energy remains a matter of economic stability. For military planners, protecting maritime infrastructure has become increasingly complex. Traditional naval threats still exist, but today they are joined by drones, cyber operations, sabotage, electronic warfare, and other emerging technologies that can challenge security in entirely different ways. Defending a port is no longer simply about guarding the shoreline. It requires continuous surveillance, intelligence sharing, air defense, cybersecurity, and close coordination between military forces, civilian authorities, and commercial operators. This changing security environment explains why relatively small systems, such as drones or portable missile launchers, are receiving far greater attention than they did only a decade ago.
Technology has altered the balance between cost and impact. A system that costs comparatively little may force an opponent to spend far greater resources on surveillance, protection, and defensive measures. That reality has become one of the defining characteristics of modern conflict. However, it is equally important to avoid reaching conclusions that extend beyond the available evidence. A reported incident does not automatically reveal the broader intentions of every actor involved. Investigations, intelligence assessments, and diplomatic exchanges often continue long after the first headlines disappear. Responsible analysis therefore requires patience. The verified facts establish what has been reported. Everything beyond those facts must be considered carefully and presented with appropriate caution. Yet when these three developments are viewed together, the reported U.S. strikes, the reported transfer of Chinese-made portable air defense systems, and the reported drone strike involving regional energy infrastructure, a broader picture begins to emerge. Not necessarily of a region moving inevitably toward a larger war, but of a region where military decisions, economic security, technological change, and geopolitical competition are becoming increasingly interconnected. And that raises perhaps the most important question of all. If these events are connected by a larger strategic pattern, what does that pattern tell us about the future of the Middle East? The weapon that changed the conversation. If there is one lesson repeated throughout modern military history, it is this. Conflicts are not shaped only by the weapons that are fired. They are also shaped by the weapons that might be used. That uncertainty alone can change how commanders think, how governments respond, and how quickly a regional crisis evolves.
It is within that context that reports of Chinese-made portable air defense systems drew such widespread attention. Unlike large surface-to-air missile batteries that require radar stations, command centers, and specialized launch vehicles, man-portable air defense systems, commonly known as manpads, are designed for mobility. A single operator or a small team can transport them across difficult terrain. They require far less infrastructure than larger air defense systems. Yet, despite their size, they have earned a significant reputation on battlefields around the world. According to Reuters, Iran was preparing to receive Chinese-made portable air defense systems. The report immediately sparked discussion among defense analysts. Not because portable missiles can replace an integrated national air defense network. They cannot. But because they may complicate the operations of helicopters, transport aircraft, and other low-flying aerial platforms under the right conditions. Military aviation depends heavily on confidence. Pilots need accurate intelligence. Commanders need predictable flight routes. Reconnaissance missions require freedom to operate. Whenever a new threat appears, those assumptions are reevaluated. Sometimes aircraft begin flying at higher altitudes. Sometimes missions become shorter. Sometimes additional escorts or surveillance assets are deployed before operations begin. In other words, even before a missile is ever launched, the mere possibility that it exists can influence military planning. That is why analysts rarely judge a weapon only by its technical specifications. Instead, they ask a broader question. How does this weapon change the decisions of the people facing it? History provides many examples. Portable air defense missiles have appeared in several conflicts over the past decades. In different circumstances, they have challenged helicopters, affected close air support missions, and forced militaries to reconsider how they use air power over contested territory. The specific results have varied from conflict to conflict. Training, logistics, intelligence, terrain, weather, command structure. All of these factors influence how effective any weapon ultimately becomes. No single system guarantees success, and no single delivery automatically changes the balance of power. That distinction is important. Public discussion often focuses on the arrival of new equipment. Military professionals usually focus on something else: integration. How will the system fit into existing defenses? Who will operate it? How quickly can personnel be trained? How will commanders coordinate it with radar coverage and other air defense assets? Without those answers, even advanced equipment may provide only limited value. Conversely, a well-organized defensive network can often achieve far greater results than the individual systems that compose it. This is why analysts describe modern air defense as a layered system. Long-range missiles monitor distant threats. Medium-range systems protect strategic facilities. Short-range defenses cover vulnerable positions. Portable systems occupy the final layer, providing localized protection where larger systems cannot always respond quickly enough. Each layer supports the others. Remove one, and the entire network may become more vulnerable. The growing use of unmanned aerial vehicles has made this layered approach even more important. Over the past decade, drones have transformed surveillance and reconnaissance. Some provide intelligence. Others identify targets. Some are designed for attack missions. Their relatively low cost has encouraged wider use across many conflicts. As drones became more common, militaries around the world invested heavily in counter-drone technologies. Electronic warfare, improved radar, mobile air defense units, portable missile systems. Each represents a different response to the same challenge. For military planners, adaptation has become continuous. Every new technology creates a new countermeasure. Every countermeasure eventually inspires another innovation. It is a cycle with no permanent finish line. The reported delivery of portable air defense systems must therefore be viewed within that broader technological evolution. It is not simply about one shipment. It reflects an ongoing competition between offensive and defensive capabilities, a competition that extends well beyond any single country. At the same time, diplomacy continues alongside military planning. Neighboring governments study such reports carefully. Allies consult one another. Defense ministries reassess regional developments. Even if no immediate military action follows, strategic calculations begin changing quietly behind closed doors. And while those discussions continued, another development was already forcing governments to look beyond the battlefield itself. This time, the concern was not aircraft. It was not missile defenses. It was the security of one of the world's most important economic lifelines, the sea. And what happened there would remind the world that modern conflicts are capable of reaching far beyond soldiers and military bases.
When the battlefield reached the sea. For decades, military planners have understood one reality better than most. Wars are rarely fought only on land. Control of the sea has always influenced the outcome of conflicts, not only because naval forces move military equipment, but because commercial shipping carries the resources that keep entire economies functioning. Every day, thousands of commercial vessels travel through waterways connecting the Middle East with Europe, Asia, and Africa. Among those ships are oil tankers, container vessels, and liquefied natural gas carriers, transporting energy worth billions of dollars. Most voyages pass without incident, but when conflict intensifies, even a single attack near one of these routes can trigger concern far beyond the country where it occurred.
That concern resurfaced after Reuters reported that a drone struck a liquefied natural gas vessel at Egypt's Damietta port. Authorities immediately began assessing the incident, while investigations continued. As is often the case during breaking events, not every detail was available in the first reports. Yet the location alone ensured that the story would receive worldwide attention. Damietta is more than just another Mediterranean port. It plays an important role in Egypt's liquefied natural gas industry, connecting regional production with international markets. For importing countries, facilities like these are part of a much larger energy network that supports electricity generation, manufacturing, transportation, and economic stability.
That is why incidents involving energy infrastructure rarely remain local stories. Financial markets monitor them, shipping companies evaluate potential risks, insurance firms reassess premiums, governments review security measures. Even before investigators complete their work, economic reactions may already begin. This is one of the defining characteristics of modern geopolitical competition. Military actions and economic consequences increasingly move together. A relatively limited security incident can influence commercial decisions made thousands of kilometers away. Shipping companies constantly evaluate operational risk. If a particular route appears less secure, they may increase protective measures, adjust schedules, or coordinate more closely with naval authorities.
Insurance providers may calculate higher premiums to reflect increased uncertainty. Energy traders monitor every new development because uncertainty alone can influence market expectations. Sometimes perception becomes almost as powerful as reality. That does not mean every incident produces long-term disruption. In many cases, commercial activity continues with only temporary adjustments. But strategic planners cannot ignore even isolated attacks because critical infrastructure forms the foundation of international trade. Protecting these facilities has therefore become a priority for many governments. Modern ports rely on much more than physical security. Radar systems monitor surrounding airspace. Maritime surveillance tracks vessel movements. Intelligence agencies exchange information with international partners. Cybersecurity teams defend digital infrastructure controlling port operations. Military units remain prepared to respond if threats emerge. The challenge is no longer limited to traditional naval warfare. Today's security environment includes drones, cyber operations, electronic warfare, sabotage, and other technologies capable of targeting critical infrastructure in entirely different ways. Each new capability requires a new defensive response. That constant cycle of adaptation is reshaping security planning across the region. When viewed independently, the reported U.S. strikes, the reported Chinese-made portable air defense systems, and the reported drone incident in Egypt appear to involve different locations and different circumstances. Yet together, they illustrate something larger. military power, economic security, technology, diplomacy.
These four elements are becoming increasingly interconnected. A decision made in one country may influence military planning in another. An attack affecting infrastructure may influence investors on another continent. A shipment of defensive equipment may alter operational planning before it is ever deployed. This is why modern conflicts cannot be understood simply by counting missiles or measuring battlefield gains. The broader strategic picture often matters just as much. And that brings us to the final question. If these developments are all part of a changing regional security environment, what conclusions can reasonably be drawn? And just as importantly, what conclusions should not yet be drawn? That is where our story now turns. When major events unfold within a short period of time, it is tempting to assume they are all pieces of a single coordinated strategy. History, however, teaches a more careful lesson. Some events are directly connected. Others simply occur during the same period while sharing the same geopolitical environment. Distinguishing between those possibilities is one of the most important responsibilities of responsible analysis. The three developments discussed throughout this documentary all originated from Credol reporting. The reported U.S. strikes on targets linked to Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the reported preparation for Iran to receive Chinese-made portable air defense systems, and the reported drone strike involving a liquefied natural gas vessel at Egypt's Damietta port. Each of these events carries its own strategic significance. Together, they illustrate how rapidly the security landscape across the Middle East can evolve. Yet it is equally important not to overstate what is currently known. Public information represents only part of the picture. Military planning occurs behind closed doors. Diplomatic negotiations often remain confidential. Intelligence assessments are rarely released in full. For that reason, analysts must separate confirmed facts from informed interpretation. The confirmed facts describe what has been reported. Interpretation attempts to explain what those developments could mean. The two should never be confused. One of the clearest trends emerging over the past decade is the growing importance of flexibility. Military organizations are investing less in preparing for one specific conflict and more in preparing for uncertainty itself. Air defenses are becoming more layered. Naval operations are becoming more integrated with intelligence networks. Cybersecurity is now considered an essential component of national defense. Unmanned systems continue to expand in both capability and availability. Artificial intelligence is increasingly assisting commanders with surveillance, logistics, and operational planning. Modern warfare is no longer defined by a single technological breakthrough. It is defined by constant adaptation. Every innovation creates a response. Every response encourages another innovation. This competition rarely pauses. It simply changes form. That reality extends well beyond the Middle East. Across Europe, Asia, and the Indo-Pacific, governments are closely watching how recent conflicts reshape military doctrine. Lessons learned in one region are frequently studied and applied elsewhere. What succeeds on today's battlefield may influence procurement decisions tomorrow. What fails may disappear from military planning entirely. Conflicts have always served as difficult classrooms for military innovation. Today's environment is no exception. At the same time, diplomacy remains just as important as military capability. History repeatedly demonstrates that lasting regional stability rarely depends on military power alone. Economic cooperation, political dialogue, international partnerships, regional security arrangements, all continue to play essential roles in reducing the likelihood of larger confrontations. Military strength may provide deterrence. Diplomacy provides opportunities to prevent crises from escalating further. For policymakers, balancing those two approaches remains one of the greatest strategic challenges. Looking ahead, several questions remain unanswered. Will regional tensions gradually decrease through diplomatic engagement? Will continued technological competition accelerate an already complex security environment? And perhaps most importantly,
Can governments successfully manage growing competition without allowing isolated incidents to trigger wider confrontation? At the time of this documentary, those questions remain open. The situation continues to evolve. New information may clarify today's uncertainties or introduce entirely new challenges. That is why responsible reporting avoids predicting outcomes with certainty. Instead, it focuses on verified facts, historical context, and careful analysis of the broader strategic environment. For observers around the world, the recent developments discussed here offer an important reminder. Modern conflicts extend far beyond the battlefield. They influence global trade, energy security, international diplomacy, military modernization, financial markets, and ultimately the strategic decisions made by governments far beyond the region itself. Whether these recent events represent the beginning of a larger shift or simply another chapter in an already complex geopolitical landscape is something that only time will answer. Until then, understanding the facts and separating them from speculation remains more important than ever. Thank you for watching. If you found this documentary informative, consider subscribing for more in-depth analysis of global security, international affairs, and the strategic developments shaping our world.